Welcome to the Catch Up with Claire. I'm your host, Claire Hoon, and every week we hand the mic to women who are showing up, speaking out, and figuring it out in real time. Because when women start talking, no topic is off limits. Careers, identity shifts, friendships, family dynamics, breakups, big dreams, bigger feelings, and yes, motherhood too. Think of it like calling your best friend on the landline in 1999. Lighthearted, unfiltered, and somehow deeper than you expected. Whether you're raising your kids, raising standards, or raising hell, this space is for you. So settle in. It's time to catch up. Welcome to the Catch Up with Claire. I'm your host, Claire Hoon, and today is May's solo episode. Before I even get into it, I have been sitting here staring at the record button for a while. I noticed myself already feeling nervous, and I've been thinking about this episode since I started this podcast. Back in November, I knew that May is an important month to me. I know it's an important month to so many women and mothers. It is Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month, and within the month of May, we also celebrate and recognize World Mental Health Day. Mental health is something that I have struggled with in the past and has really been foundational to the woman and person and mother that I am today. So it's important to talk about. The entire month of May episodes are going to be focused on maternal mental health. At the end of today's episode, I'm going to preview and share some of the guests that I have coming on. They're really special episodes that I've recorded, and I'm excited to have you here. Excited maybe sounds, it's not that it's an exciting topic, but I feel strongly and passionately about it that these are the conversations that need to be had so that the experience that I had as a new mother, that the experience of some of the friends that are going to be coming on the show had as new moms, and that so many moms still experience today. The way that we end that is through conversation and sharing our experiences and advocating and demanding better. So I already feel a little rambly. Today's solo episode, I'm going to talk about my story and history with postpartum depression. Wow, didn't think I'd be getting emotional already. We'll see where this one leads us. And as much as I've thought about doing this episode, I've put very little thought into how I'm going to do this episode, and not very little. I have an outline. I have some things that I know I want to convey, but I think I've struggled with it because I've always talked about my story to a very specific audience. So the first time I ever told my story of PPD, it was in Washington, D.C., and talking to my congressional representatives, asking for them to pass federal legislation to protect new moms. So that was a very focused conversation around advocacy and asking for action. I've talked about it with peers in sharing the experience that I went through who are, going through pregnancy and things to look out for. I've connected with other new moms who have also experienced similar things and also had some sort of perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, PMAD. That's the technical term for any type of mood disorder surrounding the perinatal period. So the perinatal period is contemplating pregnancy, so preconception through pregnancy and then postpartum. And I just think educating, using the terms so that we normalize some of these terms is important. I've never, and I was trying to think before I started recording this, I don't think I've ever sat down and just did a tell-all, which sounds like really dramatic to say. It's not like this is a tell-all, but I think why I'm struggling with it a bit is recognizing the breadth of this audience and that it's going to be very public for anyone to listen to living out there. That's kind of the point of it, is I want the information and the story that I experienced and the women who are going to be in episodes the rest of this month. It's very hard and it's heavy, and it's there's a lot of darkness in our stories and the commonality in it, but it needs to be recognized because in order to change anything, we need to understand that women and mothers are experiencing this and we shouldn't be suffering. So I'm cognizant that, who this could reach and in what capacity it might reach them. But again, fear or nerves or my feelings about that don't negate the importance of the conversation. So with that, I want to invite anyone to listening to this episode and any of the May episodes to please listen with care. If you need to skip these episodes, please do that for your own mental health. If you are struggling, there are going to be resources in the show notes of all of the May episodes. Please reach out. I want you and anyone listening to take away from the stories that are going to be shared in May is that it gets better. There is so much hope. Oh my gosh, here we go. It's so important that you get the care that is so effective. Your life is meaningful and has so much beauty ahead of you. What you might be experiencing right now are symptoms. It's not who you are. It's not who you're going to be. It's a symptom of a hard time, and it gets better. And I want you to know that, and I want you to please reach out for help. If you're in a place where you can't listen to this right now, that's okay. It's okay to turn this off, and it's okay to come back to it or never come back to it, but it's really important that you get the help you need. Please reach out to myself. Please reach out to the resources in the show notes. Please reach out to someone in your group, a friend, a colleague, a family member, but you're worthy and deserving of that care. With that, I am going to share my story with postpartum depression. I'm going to try and do this as cohesively and I guess chronologically as possible. As I just said, I don't recall ever sitting down and starting from this is what happened to this is where it ended, because there's always been a point to the conversation. Either I'm connecting with someone who went through something similar and we were sharing our that we both experienced, or I was advocating for care, or I was working with a advocacy group or nonprofit and talking about, programs for new motherhood, or trying to educate other new moms around, signs and things to look for. So how do we even talk about this? See, I've always wanted to be a mom. I always saw that in my future. Never expected the way that motherhood would greet me. And that was by complete surprise. I was 25, living in New York, getting ready for my very best friend and all of my friends to come in town to celebrate her engagement. She was getting engaged. She didn't know that yet. We were going to have a great friends weekend. As all pregnancies do, mine started with a 10-day late period. And it didn't occur to me, like maybe it should have, to take a test any earlier. Lo and behold, you could say that I was absolutely shocked to find out that I was pregnant. And I remember that moment so viscerally, holding a pregnancy test, seeing it positive, and I just broke down sobbing. I thought, how could this happen? This can't be right. I can't possibly be pregnant. So much so that I was home alone. I called my husband, who was still at work. He didn't answer because he was at work. Walked 4 blocks, sobbing down the sidewalk in New York City to urgent care. And they thought something was seriously wrong. And in my mind, something was seriously wrong. I was pregnant. And I was like, I think I'm pregnant. And they're like, okay, what's the issue? They were gentle about it. They didn't quite say that, but they did 4 P tests. I didn't know that's what was happening, but they stuck 4 in there, and it was very positive. While I was there, my husband called me back. I was still crying. He was like, "It's okay. I'm coming home. This is going to be okay." And when I got home, I remember calling my mom. She was on a work trip in Dallas. I also called her when I was walk sobbing down the sidewalk, and she didn't answer because she was presenting at a conference. She called me back. She FaceTimed me back, actually. She was in TSA at the Dallas airport getting ready to fly home. And here I am sobbing, saying I'm pregnant. And she is so excited because she's finding out she's about to be a grandmother. And it's something that I reflect back on and feel, one, obviously I'm so grateful that I have the relationship with my mom. I can pick up the phone and call her and get that support. But 2, that I was like, I always dream about, I did, becoming pregnant. But in one way, she always dreamed about being a grandmother too. And that was how I was informing her that how upset I was is how excited she was. Anyway, I stress the beginning of the journey to say that it wasn't expected to me how motherhood came to be. And I think a lot of that unpreparedness or shock, honestly, I feel like something shifted in my brain chemistry immediately. And there were so many things throughout my pregnancy that I wish we had known that could have been flagged to prevent how dark and hard and heavy motherhood really became for me postpartum. And I think it was all these sort of like little acute things that added up to be a lot. And there were so many points I look back on that could have been, if we had intervened here, could we have taken a different route? If we had intervened there, would this have prevented? Or was this story going to unwind how it did anyway? I was 25. I had been married for almost 2 years, and I just felt like a scandalous teenager. Like, it was this feeling of complete shame that I had let this happen. I type A, plan everything about my life. I am so careful. I'm so organized. I had let this happen. And I felt such immense guilt and shame. Even though this is something that we eventually one day wanted, I wanted it on our own timeline. And I walk in to my first OB appointment. I didn't even have an OBGYN in the city. I had to call and find an OBGYN. I picked the closest one to our apartment so that I could walk there. And the very first thing the doctor says, she walks in and says, is, 25, you're a baby. And I was like, yeah, I feel that way. Like, validating in a way some of the shame that I had of like, I'm too young to have a baby. Um, and so it was again like, okay, is she judging me? Why is she saying, like, is she pointing out like this is I thought it was a decision, a stupid thing that I'm not responsible enough. Again, validating all these feelings that I was already having. I'd say from there, I'm fortunate in the fact that I have very close family and friends who were super supportive, and I hid for sure the disappointment because I thought this isn't socially acceptable. Like, so many women want what I have. So many women struggle so hard and work for so many years to get what I have. I can't tell anyone that I don't want this. Like, I have to keep this secret. And so I did. I tried, and everyone around me was so excited. We were having the first baby in our friend group, the first baby in our family, first grandchild on both sides. Everyone was very excited. And I tried to just go along with it because if I went along with it, then that would get me excited about it. I didn't want a baby shower. My family wanted to throw me a baby shower. And I thought, like, how ungrateful of me. People want to celebrate this. Like, I have to pretend to be excited. I remember vividly going to register for a baby registry and thinking, like, first of all, I live in a New York City apartment. I have no space for any of this. We have to be very specific. And I had someone early on say something to me about, well, now you have to start doing your research. And they meant it well intentioned. I was in a place of such heightened anxiety that finding out I had been, let's just say, irresponsible and had a surprise pregnancy, I felt I had to then overcompensate by being the most responsible, the most due diligent, the most over-prepared for everything about caring for this baby. I mean, the levels of research that I did into every single product, if there was like an ounce of anything toxic or chemicals or plastic versus glass and the implications of bottle feeding versus breastfeeding and formula is the devil. Like, my mind was just consumed with correcting this wrong. And the way that I was going to correct it was by being perfect. I am going to be the perfect mother to this baby. I am going to make the perfect decisions, which, like, me 7.5 years later now realize, like, there is no perfection, but this is what my anxious brain was doing to me, was the way that I could make up for this was show up perfectly. And I remember being in Target with my mom registering, and she brought up some brand of baby bottles, like, oh, these look like a good fit. It was like a 4-pack. And I looked at her, and I remember the look on her face with like the look I shot her, and of like, how dare you suggest I use a plastic bottle with my baby? Do you not know anything about the dangers of plastic for a baby? Like, the way that my brain was thinking, like, having a plastic bottle would kill this child and that I would then be responsible. And her comment was like, oh, things have just changed a lot, and there's a lot of different products here now. And like, was very much just an excited grandparent who was so excited to buy me bottles for her first grandchild. And I, in my brain, was like, are you trying to sabotage me? I'm already failing as a mother because I wasn't prepared for this. And now I need to hyper prepare and be even better. And I digress into the story because I think, again, it's the anxiety in my head and the overcompensation and like the very early influence around how to be a good mother. What does it mean to show up as a motherhood in these spaces that we don't know and first time experiences? When I have girlfriends reach out to me now saying things, I know how to very, very gently reframe what they're thinking. The statements of like, I have to do this because it's better and it's the best and it's perfect. And it's like, there's such a spectrum of good and your baby's going to be just fine. The fact that you're even thinking about these things shows how much you care. And that just wasn't there for me. And that's no one's fault. We just didn't know. We didn't know that I didn't know that I was having anxiety that was going to turn into depression. That was about 6 months or so into my pregnancy. I remember backing up a little bit. The second I saw a positive pregnancy test, I had this full body knowing, like, this isn't a baby, this is a baby boy. And I know people say this about like, oh, I knew I was having this and I was so surprised that I was having the other gender. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just I had a 50-50 shot of being right, but I knew it was a boy. And finding out I was pregnant was surprise enough. So I absolutely found out the gender the second I could at that 20-week appointment. No pop in circumstance, no hoopla, just went to the OBGYN office, did the sonogram, told us it was a boy, and that was our gender reveal. But it didn't feel like a reveal because I kind of already knew that. And there was no gender disappointment whatsoever, because I truly, like, in my bones, I knew it was a boy. The fear or concern around a boy was I'm one of 3 girls. I don't have brothers. Um, I am also the most girly of girls. And I was like, I don't know what to do with a boy. I don't even like sports. What is this boy going to be into? I was very worried about how I would relate and how I would cope and how I would navigate, but it wasn't disappointment. It wasn't disappointment at all. It was, again, just a feeding the, what do I do? This is so new to me in every regard. And my mom loved to say to me, well, that's why you have a husband. He's been a boy and a man his whole life, and he does like sports, and you guys are going to figure this out together. I remember what I call my first Mother's Day, which was when I was, I guess, 7.5, 8 months pregnant. It was May of 2018. We were in St. Louis visiting my family. We were going to mass and brunch with my grandparents and my parents. And I remember waking up that morning. The day before had been my baby shower. So we flew in for my baby shower in St. Louis, and then Mother's Day the next day. And the baby shower was a lot for me, trying to pretend I felt okay and I was excited about this, and people were so excited for me, and I was still trying to be like, grateful. Thank you for coming. Can you tell that I'm dying inside? And so I felt really emotionally worn out on Mother's Day. My husband meant no harm by this. I remember saying, like, it's my first Mother's Day. And he said, well, you're not a mom yet. And ooh, was that the wrong thing to say? It made me really teary-eyed, and I think it went back to, again, invalidating that I didn't actually feel like a mother, and I didn't feel ready for this experience, and I didn't feel like a mother. I didn't feel like I should be celebrated, and I was trying to play that part. I was trying to there's a baby growing. There is a 7.5, 8-month baby in my belly. I feel him move around. He's changed everything about my life in the last 8 months. And yet, hearing this, it felt invalidating for sure. We got through Mother's Day, and the last trip of pregnancy was the end of May, a friend's wedding. I had a close girlfriend getting married in New Orleans at the end of May. All of my best friends who were also at that engagement were going to it. And I could not have felt more out of place. I was 33, 34 weeks. So it was right on the cusp of not being able to travel anymore. And I didn't want to go. I had so much anxiety. I thought I'm this weirdo freak who's now 8 months pregnant going to a wedding. We we were really financially concerned about the realities of raising a baby, and um, made the decision that I was going to go alone and save the money on a plane ticket. I was then going to stay with a friend, not get a hotel room. This was, again, like some of the anxiety speaking of how are we going to afford a baby? How are we going to afford raising like the cost of kids and childcare and having a baby and all the things that come with it. And going alone, I felt so naked, even though it was all of my closest friends. I remember asking the night before, can you just buy a ticket? Oh, and part of it was also taking off work. My husband was saving all of his vacation days because he only had 2 weeks of paternity leave. So he was trying to save his vacation days for when the baby actually arrived, which made sense. But I remember saying, like, can you just come down Friday night? Can you come down and we'll go back early Sunday so you don't miss any work? And he was like, I just don't think it's the right thing. And this was like breaking me. I felt so exposed going, and this is really where a lot of intrusive thoughts were coming into my brain in a way that I had never experienced before of, I just don't want to experience this anymore. I don't want to feel so alone. I don't feel like I fit in with my friends because no one else is pregnant. No one else is even married yet. We're going to the first wedding outside of mine. I don't feel like I can share what I'm going through. And but I didn't know how. And I didn't know how to get myself out of that situation. And I remember shutting down. Like, that was kind of my MO. We would get into these emotional, heated conversations, and I didn't know what to do with all of the emotion. And I would just go silent. And I remember I was like, I have an early flight tomorrow. I'm just going to bed. We were laying in bed, and I get out of bed and my thoughts were just spinning. Like, how do I get out of this? I don't know what to do. And I walked into the kitchen and I opened our utensil drawer, and we had all these steak knives. And I never thought I'm going to hurt myself. I just couldn't stop staring at these knives. And after a couple of minutes, my husband walked out and he saw me just like blankly staring. And I don't know the thoughts going through his mind, but he just burst out sobbing and wrapped me in a big hug and said, I'm so sorry. This is so hard for you. And it was really hard for me. And that was the first moment of recognition of him recognizing and verbalizing to me that he saw I was suffering. He saw I was in a lot of pain, and neither of us knew what to do with it. Neither of us knew the hormones. Neither of us knew that this was a common experience of pregnant people. Neither of us knew that we should reach out for help. Neither of us knew to call someone. All we knew was each other and to keep going. That this was a train that not only had left the station, but like in a matter of weeks, it was pulling in with a baby. There was a little bit of relief in that moment of he knows how hard this is, like, so acutely right now. And I think that little bit of recognition sometimes, it added relief. Like I felt a little bit of like, okay, this is how heavy it feels. And being validated, recognized, seen took a layer of this is now shared between the two of us. And we had a very long conversation. I said to him, I was like, it's not that I want to hurt myself. It's not that I want to do anything. I just don't know how to deal with this. I don't want this. And he was like, I know, but this is what we're dealing with. And finally feeling like we were a little bit on the same page of that. Like I felt like I was carrying the whole pregnancy by myself, not just the physical side of it, but the emotional side of it. That was the first time where it felt like a shared load. I ended up going to the wedding. It was so nice seeing friends. I didn't feel any of the feelings I was scared of feeling. Everyone was so excited to see me, so excited for me to be there. Like, of course they would be. It was all in my head. But this is where my brain was. We never mentioned that. It took me 3 years into therapy to actually finally tell my therapist about that story because I felt so much shame. And I talked about it in very vague ways, alluding to intrusive thoughts, alluding to dark feelings, things I didn't want to feel or experience and didn't know how to talk about because the specificity of it, I mean, it obviously made me very emotional recalling, but I felt so much shame for feeling those feelings because I didn't want to be feeling that way. I didn't want to feel so stuck. And I didn't want to feel heavy in that moment. I just didn't know what to do with all of this compounding emotion. I think, and I wish we had the tools to know we should be telling my OBGYN for this. We should be looking for a therapist. We should be talking loudly about getting help. Because again, that was the beginning and not the end of my story, unfortunately. My baby was born in July, a very healthy baby boy. He was absolutely perfect in every sense of the word. And I was absolutely devoid of emotion. I did not feel a thing, good or bad. I was so out of touch. It felt like watching your life in a way of like just so dissociated from what was going through. I describe it as there's some sort of physiological experience that took over, and my brain was so focused on keep this baby alive. Like my sole mission became keep this baby alive and make it thrive. Breastfeeding, I was obsessive about schedules, the products, people touching him, holding him. And again, I knew enough to try and hide it because everyone around us was so excited. It was the first grandbaby. It was the first baby in all of our group. Everyone wanted to see it. And I wanted it to be a happy experience. And so I was trying to participate in this. But on the inside, I was absolutely just, it was like the lights were off. I was not there. And my mom spent the month of July living with us, trying to help. And I think probably recognizing that I wasn't myself, but that just chalking it up to new motherhood of course I'm tired. I'm up all night feeding a baby. Of course I'm overwhelmed. I'm a first-time mom and just trying to find my footing. When she left, I'd found on a Facebook group a new mom group. And it was just new moms who just had babies come to this group. I didn't think of it as a support group. And it was at the Motherhood Center here in New York. I signed up. I went, not realizing, I think it started at like 10 in the morning. I had never left the apartment by myself with a baby. It didn't occur to me until that morning to like backtrack how to get there. Am I going to take the subway? Am I going to take the car? I'm going to have to put the car seat in a car by myself. There's no way I'm going on the subway with this newborn. I want to say it was 5 weeks postpartum. So the baby was about 5 weeks old. I remember getting in the Uber and then I put the wrong address in. I said I was going to like 53rd and it ended up being like 31st Street. It was a mess. I got to the group with 10 minutes left and in tears because I had paid I don't know, I wanna say $25. And again, I was so stressed about money and not being able to afford diapers that I was like, I'm spending $25 to go to this class, but I think I need to get out. My husband was like, yeah, whatever, go. And then I spent an Uber. I spent money on Uber to get there. And so I'd spent this money and then was there with 10 minutes left, feeling like I'd wasted it and that they weren't going to let me in. And they were like, come on in. They're so welcoming. The baby was crying. I'm like, am I allowed to breastfeed here? They're like, do whatever you need. There's a nursery, there's diapers. Everyone was just so laid back. And it ended up being a really positive experience because the group leader, Paige Bellenbaum, who will be on in a feature episode this month, said, we're here every week, come back. And I registered on the spot for the following week. In between that, it was 5 weeks postpartum. I had my 6-week postpartum visit with my OBGYN, and a lot of things I can now put together back then that I didn't realize were happening. It was 2018. Legislation in New York had just been passed that Paige, the group leader, had actually drafted and helped set into law, where screening for postpartum mothers was recommended at all 6-week appointments. So the Edinburgh scale, which is a screener for postpartum depression, was given to me at my 6-week appointment from my OBGYN. After a, I don't know, 7-minute visit asking how I was doing, I was like, great. Baby was met with me. I remember everyone being like, oh, how cute. He's doing great. I presented very well. If you were to see me on the street, if you were to my OBGYN interact with me, I was doing my makeup. I was putting myself together. I presented like I was thriving in new motherhood. And it wasn't until I was filling out this form, and my husband said to me afterwards, he was like, well, you could have faked it. It didn't occur to me. I was so serious about motherhood that I took these questions as gospel answers. It didn't occur to me that what they were even screening or asking for, they didn't explain it all. They're like, oh, this is just paperwork. There was another paperwork that I needed to sign off on. And so I was just like, this is part of the process. But the questions around are you smiling as much as you always have been? I am absolutely not. There is nothing happy about this. Are you crying more often? I cry all the time. All I do is cry. Do you find life as enjoyable as you used to? What is enjoyable about this? Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. So I got a perfect score on that assessment. It's either 26 or 27 out of whatever, and I got 100%. And I had taken this at the beginning before my doctor came in. It was sitting on the counter the whole time. At the end, she's like, oh, let me just check this off. She goes through and she looks up, she goes, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Thinking in the moment, yeah, I'm fine. And she's like, so tell me about what you're answering here. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't find this enjoyable. And she was like, this is a very concerning score. Do you have support in the city? I was like, no, my mom was here for a month, but she had to go back for work to St. Louis. And she's like, I'm going to write you a prescription for Zoloft. I want you to pick it up and start taking it. I'll send you resources for a therapist. You should probably get into therapy. And I think you should go spend the rest of your maternity leave with your family in St. Louis so you don't have to be alone while your husband's working. And I was like, what are you talking about? Literally was so confused. What are you talking about? The words postpartum depression never even came out of that conversation. It was, here's a prescription for Zoloft. I didn't even know what Zoloft was. Go get therapy. How do I find a therapist? And go spend the next 6 weeks in St. Louis with my mom? My mom works full time. What are you recommending me here? So I left that appointment. I remember my husband was texting me because he was at work. Appointment went well, see you later, because he was checking in, and just being very quiet, not knowing what to do. We got home that night and he was like, is everything okay? And I told him about the appointment, and he was Googling. He was like, you have postpartum depression. And I was like, no, I don't. I'm not a depressed person. I immediately, the shame I was feeling all along came right back up of no, I thought being depressed and having depression and experiencing depression made me a bad mom and meant that I was a bad mom to my baby, and that he would know and he would one day internalize this himself. And so it was just immediate guilt and shame coming right up to the surface. And I was like, no, I don't. And first of all, don't you ever tell anyone about this, because I stigma that like I immediately felt so shameful, even though there's nothing wrong with having depression. And I believed this. I just didn't think I was allowed to experience it, which is such a conundrum. I understand as I say that, but this is how I felt. It was a day or two later where I had signed up for that second new mom group session. And I went there, and I remember I just had my 6-week postpartum visit, and they're saying all of these things, and I don't know what to make of it. And very, very gently, Paige, who was the group leader, was saying, we have additional services. We have therapists on site. We're here to support new moms. Some not moms do really well with the group. And if you need more support than just a weekly group, then look at our other services. And so I made an appointment for a consultation, and they got me in pretty quickly. It was within, and again, I want to say another day or two. And I remember going back and doing the assessment, and the Motherhood Center, I didn't know what it was at the time. I just thought it was this place I went for a new mom group. But it is a partial hospitalization program. It is a outpatient treatment for PMADs, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. They treat anyone experiencing PMAD, so pregnancy and postpartum, through various levels of care, and the highest level of care being their PHP day treatment program. So it was basically 6 or 7 hours a day. You came in the morning, spent all day in various modes of treatment, and then went home at night and came back the next day. So after my assessment, they said, we think you'd be a good candidate and fit for the PHP program. And I was so adamant I was not. I was like, no, so the thing is, I'm on maternity leave and you want me to come here every single day, and I'm actually supposed to be going on a bachelorette party in a week for my best friend who got engaged right when I was found out I was pregnant. And I definitely can't miss that. I'm also supposed to take this baby to St. Louis to meet my grandparents. So I definitely can't miss that. And you want me to cancel all my plans and rearrange so that I can spend all day in a treatment program? No, thank you. They did not present it to me like that. But that was in my brain what was happening. Like, no, I'll get help and I'll come back here if it fits into my life. Like, I was not about to let motherhood be another thing that was going to set me back, and I was going to start missing out on things. So I went back the following week for the new group, and said that I'd come back. I'd start regular therapy when I get back from all of my travels. I was supposed to be gone for 2.5 weeks or so. Oh boy, was that a decision that I made. And I remember vividly them saying, let's put an appointment on the books. Because I was like, I'll call and set up an appointment when I'm back. It's going to be a tight turnaround because I'll have like a week or two left before I have to go back to work. And maybe what I just need is a change of scenery. I need to get out. I need to see friends. I need to go have fun in Las Vegas with my 6-week-old baby. Recipe for absolute disaster. But I did it. That's what happened. There was a little bit of, I don't want to say relief, but more of I was so busy. I was out of my environment and I was constantly doing things, and we were with family, and I felt busied out of having to think about sitting there and being a new mom and all these heavy things that I was experiencing in New York. And so I was away for 2.5 weeks or so, came back, and the weekend we got back, we were getting our son baptized. All of my family was coming to town. My son is named after his 2 great-grandfathers, my grandfather and my husband's grandfather. And it was going to be the first time all 3 of them were going to be together. So my son and his namesakes, and I had been excited about having everyone up for his baptism since I was pregnant. Like, that is something that was really important to me and a day to celebrate. And it was a turning point in the depression being very, very overwhelmingly bad. Something that I had looked forward to for months and something that I'd been really anchoring on, and a day that I honestly just blacked out. It was this accumulation of just being in complete overdrive, feeling like I had to throw this perfect party, because if I throw a perfect party and for everyone I'm coming in town to host and have all of these plans, it'll show that I care about my son, that I'm taking this job as a new mom seriously. They'll see that I'm capable of caring for this child. Like, it was all of these external validations that I was looking for, and I just didn't want to be part of it. My grandpa used to travel up to New York for work and would always go to Tavern on the Green, and would always I grew up hearing about business lunches he'd have at Tavern on the Green, and, maybe from people who are here from New York being like, "Oh, it's a tourist place." Like, it was just always a special place. Like, he would come in town and we would go there and eat, have brunch, and I was still on leave, and I remember him being in town saying calling me and saying, "Claire, Mimi and I are gonna go over to Tavern on the Green. Why don't you come over with the baby? We'd love to see you guys." And I totally lied. I lied and said we had an appointment and wouldn't be able to make it. And I lied because I just couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want anyone to see me. I thought they would be able to see right through how much I was hurting, how much I didn't feel worthy of them being here to celebrate our baby because I wasn't doing a good enough job. I thought they would know that I wasn't good enough. I didn't feel good enough. And I was probably closest to my grandfather. And yet I felt like I couldn't even sit at lunch at the same table. And my mom was in town, and I was like, "Mom, what are you doing?" And she had to work, and my husband was at work. And it's something that I think about because he died a couple years ago, of the things I would do to rewind the clock and take my son over to Tavern on the Green and have lunch with them. And it's something I feel so robbed of. And I feel like I robbed myself of it. Like, seriously, Claire, how hard is it? It is a Friday afternoon. It is a beautiful sunny day in New York. You can stroll across the park. You can put your baby in the back of an Uber or a cab. And yet here I was, laying in bed, sobbing. The baby was asleep. And I just was paralyzed. I could not leave. And finally, my mom came over, and I just lied and said I fell asleep. I was up all night with the baby. She helped get me ready, get the baby ready. We ended up going to dinner that night. And then the next day, I remember turning to my husband in the car on the way home from the baptism saying, "Did it happen? Did they baptize him?" And he looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Did it happen already?" I completely blacked out. I don't remember standing. I was holding the baby. I don't remember standing on the altar. I don't remember blessing him. I don't remember the priest putting the ointment on him. And he was like, "Yeah, like, he's good. Everything went really well. We're going home now and everyone's meeting us there." And I had hired a photographer to take pictures because all of our family was coming in town, and I really wanted this to be documented, and my husband knew someone at work who had a little side gig. It was 2 or 3 weeks later where I saw those pictures. Looking at them just, like, sent me into a complete panic attack because I am smiling. I look happy. I don't recognize this person at all, and not only do I not recognize this person, I don't remember being in that moment. So that was a very hard day. I remember I wanna say it was Tuesday after, the baptism. Everyone left. My mom went back Sunday or Monday, and I had that appointment. at the motherhood center for my follow-up, and I think it was the first time I went in, like, had not showered, messy bun, no makeup, just, like, so raw, sweatpants, milk-stained T-shirt, like, completely disheveled from the version of me that was pre like, post-birth, but, like, pre this kind of, like, breakdown, who presented very well. I was gathering myself, I was getting myself dressed, I was to this visit of, like, I have nothing left. I am so unwell, and I remember going to that appointment just sobbing and saying, "I can't do this anymore. It's too much work," and I remember, like, being really quiet and them talking to me and saying, like, "Do you have any questions for us? How can we help?" And I remember saying, "I know I need to be here, but I'm scared you're gonna take my baby. If I tell you how I'm really feeling, you're gonna take my baby away from me." And they're like, "We're not gonna do that. We're gonna get you help. You don't need to feel this way, and we're gonna help." And being able, I don't know what it was that brought me, because that was how I was feeling. I was like, you hear about these stories in the news and these very, postpartum psychosis where, it's very weighted language that we use of we're going to lock women up and they're going to be locked up. Like when people get help and need intensive psychiatric care, instead of saying they're receiving critical life-saving care, we say they're locked up. We see it as very stigmatized, and I thought if I was honest about how much I was struggling, one, it would be admitting I'm not a good mom, and two, everything I had worked to keep together would be taken from me. And I just knew I was at a point that I'm gonna lose either way because I can't keep living like this. And the need and heightened feel to escape from all of it was a recurring, ever-present thought. I agreed that I needed the additional level of care. Uh, we called my husband together. He was very supportive. We had been saving. There was a portion of it that was covered by insurance. There was a portion of it that was highly expensive. And we also knew that it this was money we had to spend, and this was care that I needed. So, I ended up spending 5 weeks in their day program. Monday through Friday, I would wake up. The first week or so, I took an Uber every day. I went down, come home, go back again the next day, um, and it changed my life. It gave me my life back, and I'm so beyond grateful for that. I have been in therapy every single week ever since for 7 years now, and going back to the very beginning of this episode before I start talking through the story, if you've been a longtime listener of this show, if you've listened to the last 7 months worth of shows, the voice that you hear on the other side of the microphone is because of saying yes to treatment and being able to have access to treatment and being able to receive that treatment. I do not take for granted for a second the position of privilege that I'm in to have received that, to have had the access, to have had the financial ability to say yes, because it saved my life. There's a woman I think of often from that program who didn't have the same outcome that I did, and her baby was born the same month as me, and she lost her battle with depression. And I think how grateful I am that I'm still here. And then I get to see my son grow up, and then I get to have a beautiful experience of joy that I have had since then. And so, what I want to leave you with, I'm not going to end this episode like this, but what I want to end telling my story with is there's so much hope to be had. If you're experiencing symptoms of depression, if you know someone in your life who is struggling, reach out, get them help, hold their hand through it. I didn't have a lot of support, not because nobody cared. Everybody cared. Nobody knew. I was suffering in silence because I was ashamed, and nobody knew because of how I was presenting to dig a little bit deeper. When there's a new mom and a new parent in your life, be in their face. Ask the question and ask it again and ask it a third time and pick up the phone and hear their voice and get them talking and check in not just once after the new baby is born, check in for the next 6 months, check in for the next year. Postpartum is so fragile. I had a lot of ups and downs that first year. It took me 10 months to really have my depression fully lift. Until I remember, it was 9 months postpartum when I finally said, I love you, and felt it to my son. And I've worked through the feelings of guilt and shame on that. And it's not because I didn't love my baby. I loved him all along. It's because I was struggling and I was really sick. Treatment exists. Treatment is so effective, and treatment can save so many lives and turn so many lives around. That's why we need to keep having these conversations. That's why the month of May is so important. And that's why the month of May is dedicated to maternal mental health here on the Catch Up with Claire. If you're still listening, my gosh, thank you. I cried a lot more than I thought. Feels really raw. I haven't shared my story like that. And there's a lot more to it that I'm going to be talking through this month. I'm really, really, really grateful for the women who have agreed to come on and share their stories this month. So I'm going to do a little bit of a preview of what to expect, and you're going to hear tidbits of some more of my experience, some more stories that I share in the episodes this month. So I talked about her in this episode, but Paige Bellenbaum, who is one of the original co-founders of the Motherhood Center, she now does consulting work across the board with government agencies, with the Motherhood Center, with educational facilities to really bring PMADs, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, into the general lexicon and conversation so that this is something that people have a broader awareness of and how it really impacts new moms and then families. Your experience postpartum sets the foundation of how you're able to show up as a mother and parenthood, and really making sure that families are given a solid foundation. A lot of time, care postpartum is focused on the baby and the mother is lost. So a lot of what Paige does is make sure that we are connecting it back to the mom who has gone through this completely transformational experience. Regardless of whether it was good or bad, biologically, what we go through is a complete rewiring of our brain chemistry because of the hormones we experience, because of the intensity of hormones under such a condensed moment of time. There's actually a term for it. It's called matrescence, and it's the equivalent of what we go through in adolescence when you go through puberty. But mothers experience it when they become a mom for the first time. So Paige comes on and talks to us all about her work, all about the field of how she got into this, her own experience with PPD. It was such a gift, I think, for both of us to reconnect after all these years, her being critical to me getting the care that I need and through the Motherhood Center, and then also how her work has grown since then. I also have two mom friends who come on. One is a woman who was in my cohort at the Motherhood Center. Our sons were born the same month. She was a couple weeks ahead of me at the Motherhood Center, and so we overlapped for a few weeks. And I was there a couple weeks after her, and she's been a lifeline since the day we met. She's one of my closest friends. We record an episode together talking about her experience and then how our motherhood journeys have intersected and how we've been a support for each other because of what we went through ever since then. And then another mom friend I met at Mom Congress, which I've talked about on here before, but it is a advocacy event in Washington, D.C. It's where I talked about my story with PPD for the first time. And she comes on, a mom I met at the second time I attended Mom Congress, comes on and shares her story with postpartum depression and what that experience was like for her. And there's a surprise episode at the end of the month that has been in the works. Yep, I'm going to leave it for a surprise for now, but it's a conversation that is very special to me. And I'm excited to leave on the month on a hopeful note. I know at the beginning I talked about, I think it is important to share these stories. I think it is important to share these conversations because until we normalize it and until we destigmatize these experiences, we're not going to be able to do better by new moms. And I think there is, as you heard me say over and over again, I had so much shame from the moment I found out I was pregnant, all the way through 1 year postpartum. And I didn't feel like I could get the help that I need. And because of how I presented, nobody knew to ask the questions. And so what I want to take, what I want you to take from this is connect with the moms and the new moms in your life. Reach out and make sure that they're okay. Even if they are okay, still show up. Send the text. Say, I'm thinking about you. Say, you know how hard it is. Say you don't know what to say, but you're here for them. Let them know that you're thinking about them and give the new mom some grace. I appreciate you for listening. If you want to connect, if you're a new mom, even if you're not a new mom, if you've supported a new mom, if any of this resonates and you experienced it and you want to share your story, please reach out. With that, happy Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month. It's going to be a good month of episodes on this show. I'm excited to bring them to you. I hope that this sparks a conversation, and I appreciate you listening. With that, if you feel so called to share this with a mom, share this with someone who might need to hear it, might need to hear a story of hope, do so with care. And until next week, be kind, be brave, and be safe out there.